Welcome back. We are in the book of Esther. We will be covering chapters 4 and 5 this time, 2 chapters. And we're going to be talking about the banquets. So let's just review a little bit before we get started in our new study. That is, the people of Judah had been taken into captivity by the Babylonians. Remember that the nation of Israel split after King Solomon, and they split, and the northern part called themselves Israel, and the southern part called themselves Judah. Judah somewhat followed the Lord. Israel never did. Anyway, Israel was taken into captivity by the Assyrians, and actually scattered. They scattered them all around. The Babylonians, the Assyrians tried to capture Judah, and they did destroy a lot of their cities, but they were not able to take Jerusalem. And then the Babylonians came along, and by this time, Judah was worshiping idols and so forth, and the Babylonians were able to capture them. Anyway, Babylon was overthrown after 70 years by the Medo-Persians. And at the time of the Medo-Persian overthrow, they allowed the Jews to return to the land. Any of them that wanted to. Many of them did. Quite a few of them had never been in Israel. And so many of those decided that they were perfectly able to stay there in Babylon or in the Medo-Persian Empire. And they did that. But again, they had been there for 70 years. Some of them had, the Babylonians did 3 deportations, and some of them had only been there for as short a time as 50 years. But anyway, 70 years from the first deportation. But years later, of the Medo-Persian Empire, we got a king named King Ahasuerus, and he planned that he was going to conquer the Greeks. He was going to take their land. Anyway, he had a 6-month planning session where he had his leaders together, and at the end of that planning session, he had a 7-day drunken party. On the 7th day, he called for his wife Vashti, to come and strut before the drunks. Yeah. She refused to do that. It embarrassed the king. His advisors told him that the men of the realm would be in trouble, that if he didn't divorce her and make a show of punishment to her, that the wives of the kingdom of the various men would be giving them trouble. So he divorced her. Anyway, he did so with a royal decree, and as such, it couldn't be changed. Well, he went to war with the Greeks, and he lost. And when he came back, he wanted a big hug from Vashti, but he couldn't do that because he had signed a law that said he didn't. Anyway, his advisors told him that he ought to bring all the pretty virgins of the land to come in and him choose a new queen. And so he did so. Supposedly there were about 400 virgins that were brought in to him, and each lady he judged by sleeping with them for a night. Anyway, Esther was chosen. She was an orphan. She was an orphan Jew. Esther had been raised by her cousin Mordecai, And he followed her to the women's house where they went initially to prepare to meet with the king. And then from the time that she went to the palace, he was standing in the gate of the palace where he could kind of watch what was going on with Esther. In doing so, he heard two of the king's guards planning a plot to kill the king. He told Esther, and she told the king, and they wound up investigating it and actually hung these two guys that were planning to do the king in. And Mordecai's name was recorded in the official record of the kingdom. Another crucial character that we run into, his name was Haman. And the king had promoted Haman to the second position in the kingdom. He really trusted Haman. But in line with that promotion, he was ordered to, or people were ordered to bow to him like they did to the king. But Mordecai wouldn't bow. That made Haman so angry. This guy doesn't respect me. He doesn't respect the king. He won't do. Anyway, he went in with a decree to the king, and with that decree, all Jews were supposed to be killed on the 13th day of Adar. Now, that's the last month of the Jewish year. It's approximately our month of February, March, in that kind of time frame. Anyway, Haman was going to have all of the Jews killed because of what Mordecai was doing, because he found out that Mordecai was a Jew. And it just so happened that there was a traditional hatred between the people of Haman and the people of Mordecai, that is, the Jews. We've got a memory verse here. Now, this is a memory verse that I think is very fitting to the book of Esther. It's a memory verse that we're calling it a hamburger verse. We've got the bread, the top and the bottom of the hamburger. And there's all kind of stuff in between there. Some of it good, some of it like jalapenos that might burn your mouth. Anyway, we've got all that in between there. So let's say our memory verse together. It says, "The Lord is the light and my salvation." The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. Remember, we got all the juicy stuff going on in between there. We start praising the Lord. All these bad things happen. And then we say, wait on the Lord. Wait, he's going to take care of it. That's what our memory verse is all about. We're going to start our one-word descriptions of each of the chapters here so that you can kind of remember where things are in the things. Chapter 1. What did we call going on there? It was divorce. That's where the king divorced his wife. Then chapter 2. We talk about women. That's where we had the beautiful women called before the king to find a new queen. Then chapter 3. Oh, this is a good one. Bow. The people were ordered to bow before the king or before Haman because he was a top representative of the king. Then we got chapters 4 and 5, which we're studying in this particular section, and we're going to call that banquets. And so the We'll see what that's all about as we get into it. You that have read ahead, you know what it's all about. All right. I took a break from my studies as I was going through this. Sometimes, you just need a break where you don't have to think about anything. Anyway, that's what I did. And I watched an episode of Gunsmoke. Two fellows had wanted to kill Matt Dillon, the sheriff, or the marshal. I forget which he was. Marshal Dillon, yeah. Anyway, one of them had already tried. He thought he'd killed Dillon. He shot him, and evidently some things fell on him. But Dillon recovered from that. And so this one guy was looking at it as something spooky. Nobody can kill Dillon, because there he is walking around alive after he thought he'd killed him. Anyway, they paid a drifter $200 to do the job for them. But he failed too. He shot Matt in the leg, but didn't kill him. Again, they come up with this idea that Matt Dillon is some kind of a spook. And so one of them wound up getting drunk, and he decided he was going to try it again. And he went into town, and he was calling out to Matt Dillon, hiding as he did so. And Matt Dillon was looking for where he was, and he turned to shoot him, and of course Matt Dillon shot him. And again, we have this idea of the spook. You can't kill Matt Dillon. Well, this is kind of the idea of the Jews all down through the ages. People have tried and tried and tried to kill the Jews, and you just can't do it. You know why we can't do it? God is protecting them. Anyway, this guy that had been paid the money couldn't do it. They've formed governments, Germany for one, to try to do the job. Couldn't get it done. It seemed that nobody can kill the Jews. And indeed, the Lord has things for the Jews still in the future. And he's not going to let the Jews be destroyed. All individuals may die, just like individual Christians may die, but they can't get rid of the Jews. It's just like Matt Dillon. Sorry to bring that secular thing in there, but I thought it was interesting that I ran into that as I was studying this, and they're trying to get rid of the Jews. Anyway, in the story of Esther, we've got a man of the people of the Amalekites. Now, the Jews, they tried to destroy the Jews in the wilderness while they were led by Moses. You remember when Aaron and Hur had to help Moses hold his rod up. As long as his rod was up, the Jews were winning, and if he dropped his rod, the Amalekites were winning. Anyway, they did win the battle against the Amalekites. They didn't destroy them all. But then the Amalekites joined in with the Midianites, and you remember the story of the Midianites and Gideon in the land in the book of Judges went after the Midianites and beat them, and they failed. They didn't destroy the Jews either. But anyway, there's something spooky about these people. When I say spooky, I mean God's controlling things. But it looks like somebody's protecting them. Indeed, that's true that they are being protected. Nobody sees the protector. Nobody sees the protector in action. And nobody in the book of Esther even names the protector. They don't recognize that he's there at all, but he's there. Outline, I got a horrible outline here. It's way too long, but that's what we're going to work with. We're going to look at the protest, the embarrassment, the breaking news, ask the question, is God able? And then we'll talk about stepping out and pride being handled. Esther chapter 4 and verse 1. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes. Now, remember what was done here is a decree was signed by the king. Now, what the king did is he actually gave his ring, which had his signet. But the decree was essentially signed by the king. The king had given his ring to Haman, and Haman actually did the signing with the king's ring. It says, when Mordecai perceived all that was done, that is, he knew that this decree had been signed and that all of the Jews were to be killed. Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth and ashes and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry. He's trying to grab a crowd together, make sure that they understand what's going on. He's become a political activist. Why not heat is set to die anyway. I don't know what that means. But anyway, they didn't have Facebook or Instagram or anything like that to get the news out. So Mordecai is out there proclaiming what the decree is all about and making sure that the Jews, particularly the Jews, but everybody else too, but he wanted everybody to know what this decree was all about. Let's read verse 1 again. It says, and Mordecai perceived all that was done. When Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes as a sign of mourning, and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and a bitter cry. He was trying to get a crowd together. He just wanted everybody to know what was going on, and he was explaining the decree to everyone. Verse 2, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth. Now, they had a dress code, evidently, that did not allow such things as sackcloth to go in before the king. Now, I don't know what the dress code is for the White House, but I think respect is in order when you go to a place like that. And in Persia, there was a dress code to show respect to the king. In Persia, sackcloth and ashes was not a nice thing to do. And Mordecai was letting all know about this decree. Verse 3, and in every province, that is, there were 127 provinces, including the province of Israel. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was a great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. Mordecai wasn't alone in his mourning about this. It was to happen all over the Medo-Persian Empire, 127 provinces, and they were not burning buildings. They were fasting and weeping. Now, normally when you have fasting going on, you got prayer. I suspect, even though it doesn't say they were recognizing God, I suspect that they were in prayer. My guess is that heaven was full of hearing from Persia. Normally, people facing death, men's hearts change and turn toward God. I think of the two thieves on the cross. One thief actually turned to Jesus and asked him to remember him when he went into his kingdom. The other, hard-hearted, didn't want any part of it. One changed, the other just had a hard heart. So maybe not all, but many, maybe not all of the Jews, but many were mourning there in the provinces of the Medo-Persian Empire. Others were probably looking for a way to escape. Some may have been trying to get into Greece that had defeated the Persians. Verse 4, Esther's embarrassment. So Esther's maid and her chamberlains came and told it her. She doesn't know what this decree is all about. That's what Mordecai was doing, is he was making the decree known to the people. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, she was embarrassed, and sent raiment to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. She wanted him to dress up and look more presentable to be in the king's gate, but he refused. He just said that no, he wasn't going to do that. Have you ever been embarrassed about clothes that a relative was wearing? Maybe baggy jeans with the underwear in view, maybe an itsy-witsy, teeny-weeny yellow polka dot bikini. Anyway, Esther was probably in her royal attire, and she was horrified to hear that her beloved cousin, and by the way, recognize that her servants there in the palace knew about her connection to Mordecai. It wasn't generally known. The king didn't know, neither did Haman. But anyway, she sent clothes out, and Mordecai wouldn't have any thing to do with changing his clothes. But she probably thought he couldn't afford anything better. At least that may be what she thought about. So she got clothes together, but he refused them. Evidently, her TV was tuned to CNN or something like that. She didn't get the right news. Anyway, she had no knowledge of the king's decree, and Mordecai's refusal made her realize that something was seriously wrong. Verse 5. Then called Esther to Hatash, one of the king's chamberlains. Now, this is another guy that we've got in the picture here. He's not going to play a very important role in the drama, but he's prominent here because he's the one that handled the communication between Esther and Mordecai. And so let's go to Esther chapter 4, verses 5 through 9. You have to have your Bibles with this. Then called Esther for Hatash, one of the king's chamberlains, and we just read the first part of the verse there. Then called Esther for Hatash, one of the king's chamberlains, whom he had appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hatash went forth to Mordecai unto the street of the city, which was before the king's gate. And Mordecai told him all that had happened unto him, and the sum of money. By the way, Haman had promised to pay those that killed the Jews, but he was going to put that money in the king's treasure house. Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasurers for the Jews to destroy them. So he gave him a copy of the writing of the decree, gave him a copy of it so that Esther would know that what he was saying was really true. Also gave him a copy of the writing of the decree that was given at Shushan to destroy them, and to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should go in unto the king, and make supplication unto him, and make a request before him for her people. And Hatash came and told Esther the words of Mordecai. So, the scriptures are very descriptive here. It doesn't need a lot of comment. Esther knows now what was happening, so she responded. Let's go to verse 10. Again, Esther spake unto Hatash, and gave him commandment unto Mordecai. All the king's servants and people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come unto the king in the inner court, who is not called, there is one law for his to put him to death, except such to whom the king shall hold out his golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come in unto the king these 30 days. And they told to Mordecai Esther's words. Understand what she's saying. Here she is, the queen. She has not been called to the king for 30 days. Now, I don't know how you get away with not calling your wife for 30 days, but the king hadn't called his wife for 30 days. And she's afraid that he's doing something else. Maybe she's afraid that he's actually looking to have another beauty contest and get rid of this wife and go for another one. I don't know. Anyway, excuse me, I went the wrong way again. The mouse is very touchy. If I touch it, it goes in the wrong direction. But the king supposedly had guards stationed by him with axes, and it was, according to the king's invitation, somebody could come in, but if they were not invited and he didn't hold out his scepter to them, then it was up to those guards to take care of them. It didn't matter whether it's a woman or whomever. But it had been 5 years since he had had the beauty contest, and maybe Esther put on a pound or two in that period of time. Remember, she probably didn't have a gym to go to, and she had all kinds of good foods. Who knows? But anyway, the king held out his scepter to Esther, and he welcomed her. So the head choppers were not to intervene there, but she worried about it. She didn't know what was going to happen when she went into the king. Maybe he was wanting to set her aside to get a younger one. Verse 13 and 14. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape the king's house, more than all the Jews. He's telling Esther, people are going to know that you're a Jew. And when this decree is executed, it wasn't supposed to happen until a particular date, 11 months away from when the decree was issued. Anyway, he says, you'll be found out and you'll be killed too. Don't think you'll get away with it because the king can't change it. Verse 14, for if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall there be enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. like God. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. That is, the ones right now are going to get destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? These verses are amazing. They have implications, and Mordecai kind of put a threat on Esther. He said, somehow, some way, the Jews are going to be spared, but not you. Esther, you and your relatives are going to die if this decree is carried out. When they start hunting for the Jews, you'll be found. Think about Germany. Before the death camps, the Jews had to wear badges identifying themselves as Jews. Is God able? Excuse me, I got to take a quick drink here. The choice of possible salvation for her and her relatives, or instant death. For sure, at the end of the year, she was going to die. She had a why, a choice of which route to take. To not speak to the king, or to go to the king and risk dying. And even if she did speak to the king, supposedly he couldn't change the order. So her life was a death sentence either way she goes. However, since we know the king couldn't change the decree, we don't know how that's going to work out. Verse 14 again. If thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall the enlargement and the deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. God's made some promises to the Jews, folks. He's got things that they're going to accomplish in the future. That's why Germany couldn't destroy them, why others that have tried it can't destroy them. But who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? And I've got that part of the verse as kind of a title for these pages. Who knows whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? This is often quoted. It's quoted. Quoted when there's a why in the road. When there's a why in the road of our life. It wasn't clear to her which way would be best for her. It was clear which way would be best for her family, but which was best for her personally? Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Esther had already been personally violated by having to sleep with the king. God didn't protect her from that. She could no longer marry a nice Jewish boy and go and have a nice Jewish life, Jewish family life. But maybe Esther was especially beautiful just for this cause. God has a purpose for each of us. She could choose either direction of the why in her road and waste her life and her purpose, but she had no clear vision of what that purpose was. Folks, that's the way we run our lives. We're not sure. The Lord gives us whys in the road, and our vision is not clear. We try to choose what the Lord wants us to do. But she had to choose between what was good for her personally and what was good for her people. Mordecai had suggested that one of her choices might lead to salvation of all the Jews. Maybe you will endure the problem just to bring glory to the Lord. The question is, what is your outlook? For me, myself, and I, or what's possibly good for others? I don't know if you have ever been put in a position like this or ever had such a question asked. Let's go to verse 15. Then Esther bade them to return Mordecai this answer. Go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me. Again, I think when they're fasting, they're praying. Fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and even if I perish, I perish. So Mordecai went his way, and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. That is, he asked all of the Jews to fast and pray. I'm adding that pray. Don't hit me too hard. I'm telling you I'm doing it. Still, God is not mentioned at this point, but I don't think you can fast and like a mass fast, mass lose weight. No, I don't think so. Anyway, your finances may be in trouble. Your kids may have turned away from the Lord. You may have cancer. God can handle it. He may not do what we want him to do, but he indeed is able. Are you willing to accept God's answer when you come to a Y in the road? Let's go on into chapter 5 and read the first 3 verses there. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house, over against the king's house, and the king sat upon his royal throne in his royal house, over against the gate of the house. And it was so, when the king saw Esther the queen standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight, and the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther, and what is thy request? He knows she's coming there asking for something. It shall be given thee, and listen to this, to half of the kingdom. Oh, he wasn't trying to have another beauty contest. He still was in favor of the beauty that he had. So he held out his scepter to her. And excuse me while I'm turning my pages here. There. So we're back to our Cinderella story. Cinderella evidently hadn't put on any pounds. She was evidently as pretty as she was 5 years earlier. So the king had avoided her for 30 days. We don't know why. But anyway, maybe he was busy with something else. But he was excited to see her. And he wanted to give her something. Up to half the kingdom he was willing to give her. Verse 4. And Esther answered, If it seem good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him. So that very day she's going to have a banquet for the king, and she's inviting Haman to come too. Oh, yes, she wanted him. The honeymoon was over, but she wanted the king. I can see the excitement building in him. Now, what I'm saying is that she wanted the king. The king wanted, she saw in Esther coming to him that she wanted him to come. So the excitement's building for him. They're going to have a party. I don't know why they wanted Haman there. Well, I do know why. But anyway, it was okay, and that's what she wants. Verse 5 and 6. And the king said, Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said. So the king and Haman came to the banquet that Esther had prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to half the kingdom it shall be performed. Okay. So he started sousing this guy up for a bit. And that was to get the king ready for his decision. Remember, last time he got soused up, that probably wasn't the last time, but anyway, last time we saw him get soused up, that's when he divorced his former wife. Let's go to verse 7. Then answered Esther and said, My petition and my request is... And she stopped. Oh, boy, this must be a big one. She paused. Everything was ready. She had full attention, and Haman was sitting there. There was great honor to be with the queen and the king together. Oh, she boosting his spirits. She must have a big request. And the offer was to half of the kingdom. And she paused. My petition and my request is... Oh my, is it more than half the kingdom? Verse 8. If I have found favor in the sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. Oh, come back. You're not going to hear my request today. I pause. Come back tomorrow, and then you'll hear my request. Oh, such suspense. What is it that she wants? Oh, my. We got to come back tomorrow to know. Verse 9. Then went Haman forth that day, joyful with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, oh my, he's so happy he got to go to the queen's banquet. Just him and the king. But then he saw Mordecai as he's going home, that he stood not up, nor moved for him. He was full of indignation against Mordecai. Mordecai's in his way. He's in the gate, and he won't get out of the way of Haman. Ew. Haman had to push his way through. Such suspense. And I think I went the wrong way again. Haman had been a happy camper. He was important. The queen had him at her banquet with the king. But then there was Mordecai. Probably still in sackcloth, still not bowing. He wouldn't get up out of the way. Haman's authority was exceeded only by the king. Of course, we know that the king's authority was exceeded by God. But they didn't mention that. Anyway, the next day, they were to go to the queen's second banquet. Haman's thinking, I'm the boss, and Mordecai will not get out of my way. Grr! What does this guy think he is? Or who does this guy think he is? Verse 10. Chapter 5, verse 10. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. He didn't haul off and punch him that time. Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zareth his wife. And Haman told them of the glory and of the riches and of the multitude of his children, and all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, yea, Queen Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she prepared but myself. Nobody but me went in there. And tomorrow I'm invited unto her also with the king. I went in there the first time. I'm the only one she invited. Look how important I am. And she's invited me to another one tomorrow. Haman could brag. He was great. He assembled all his friends and told them how great he was. Verse 13, yet all this availeth me nothing so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting in the king's gate. Oh, he humiliates me. Have you ever had somebody that just grated on you? Haman was having a great day, and all of that was destroyed when he saw Mordecai. Verse 14. Then said Zareth, his wife, his advisor, then said Zareth, his wife, and all his friends unto him, let a gallows be made 50 cubits high. That's 75 feet. That's a high gallows. And tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hung thereon. You're not going to wait for this, wait to the end of the year to hang Mordecai. He's going to hang him right now. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet. And the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made. Oh my, they can build a 75-foot gallows in one day? Oh my, okay. Just hang him. That's what they advised him. Everybody needs a wife and friends that will make recommendations like that. This reminded me of Psalm 1. It says, blessed is the man that walketh not in the counsel of the ungodly. Oh, Mordecai was getting counsel. Nor standeth in the way of sinners, nor sitteth in the seat of the scornful. Oh, his advisors all fit those ungodly, the way of sinners, and the seat of the scornful. They fit that. Pride was handled. Then Zareth, his wife. Zareth is another character in this study. Anyway, she and the friends counseled together. Haman was so important that he didn't have to wait until the 13th day of Adar to get rid of this guy Mordecai, his buddy the king surely would sign an order to hang this one guy that was so disrespectful to him. Oh my. His ungodly friends knew exactly what to do. Hang the disrespectful guy. Hang him high, 50 cubits or about 75 feet. The people from all over would be able to see this guy hang that wouldn't bow to Haman. That would make Haman just even that much more important, and people would bow lower to him. Oh, sure. So Mordecai had it built. Mordecai wasn't going to have to wait. Haman was ready to go partying. You're going to have to come back to see what happens at the end of this story. Next week, we will see Haman, or see if Haman was able to get this death certificate for Mordecai. And of course, I know most of you are going to cheat and read ahead. That's good. I like to see people reading the scripture. But just know that there are troubles in Shushan. We are come to a series of jalapenos in our hamburger. Let's remember where we started. Psalm 27, verses 1 and 14. The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the strength of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? Wait on the Lord. Be of good courage, and he shall strengthen thine heart. Wait, I say, on the Lord. We're in the Medo-Persian Empire. The king had gone to war against Greece and lost. In preparation of his 6-month planning, he had a 7-day party, and the king, drinking, he took the counsel of his advisors and divorced his wife. Then he had the beauty contest, a new wife. Esther, an orphan. An orphan? God pays attention to orphans. And a Jew was selected. Her cousin Mordecai overheard a plot against the king and reported it and got his name written in the Kingdom Chronicles. The king promoted the man named Haman to be the second in command. Mordecai refused to bow, though, to Haman. They were traditional enemies. Of course, I don't know that they knew that. But Haman learned that Mordecai was a Jew. And, it wasn't known to Haman that Esther and Mordecai were connected. But Haman got the king to sign an order that all the Jews were to be killed on a certain date. Mordecai notified Esther, and she went in to speak to the king about this. She invited the king to a banquet. The king accepted her invitation, but she invited Haman to come also. She didn't tell him what she wanted. You got to come back to the next study to find out what she wanted. But remember, she did this at personal risk. Esther chose to try to rescue her family. An even greater rescue plan was executed for you, and that was Jesus coming to the earth, paying the price for our sin, taking the full wrath of God upon him as he carried our sin. He carried that to the cross with him. And remember, he says that if thou shalt confess with thy mouth the Lord Jesus, and shalt believe in thine heart that God hath raised him from the dead, thou shalt be saved. For with the heart man believeth unto righteousness, and with the mouth confession is made unto salvation. Righteousness is not by what we do. Righteousness comes when we believe in our heart about Jesus. Do you believe today? Are you saved? Thank you for being with me.